Marina Getino, and is going to present us her works about soil carbon accumulation under mixed pine beech forest. It was number this one. Okay, you got it. Exit full screen. Okay. So, hi everybody. My name is Marina, and today, as I said, I'm coming to talk about. What? Sorry, one moment. ¿Me deja pasar? Vale, sí. Ya está. So, hi again. My name is Marina, and as she says, I'm here today to talk about COVID-19. Well, okay. As we know, we are now facing a very difficult moment because we are in the middle of a very bad and sad global pandemic called the COVID-19, and COVID is chasing us as the Pac-Man chases the small ghosts. So this is so important that we have invested a lot of money in science in order to combat and mitigate this problem. So thanks to the...
Use the keyboard.
Okay. So thanks to the investigations, thanks to science, we have the vaccines, and now we are running away from COVID. So probably this is our worst problem nowadays. No, really I'm here to talk to you about climate change. We are forgetting about this because, of course, COVID nowadays is very important, but we don't have to forget about it because, as we all know, climate change is one of the biggest probably the biggest environmental threat that current and future generations has to cope with. And we also have to continue with investigations in the field of how to combat, how to mitigate these problems. So, one of the ways, and in what my research is focused, is in soil. Soils has a great potential of carbon sequestration. They can accumulate and protect the carbon inside it, and they accumulate more carbon than all the carbon in the atmosphere and the vegetation together. So they could be one best friend in order to fight against climate change. But I want to focus more, and I want to focus in forest soils, because forest ecosystems have a great potential for that. And in the last decades, mixed forests has aroused a great interest among the scientific community, but we need to increase the knowledge. We have to study more about how they behave with all this carbon sequestration and how, to know if they are good friends to mitigate climate change. So, in the presentation that I'm going to talk today, the aim of this study was to assess carbon sequestration of pine beech mixed stands versus its monocultures. So there you can see we have the beech, and here is the pine. Apart from that, we set some questions that we want to answer. For example, does the mixture of stands storage more carbon than the monospecific ones? Is the carbon along the soil profile, the distribution, is affected by the stand type? And are there any differences in the leaf litter accumulation and the composition? So let's see. To carry out this study, we have to move into Germany and Poland, where I had my experimental plots for the pine beech mixture. So there, we work with the triplets. So we have some plots with pure 100% of pine, the pure pine, some with a mixture, and others where there's no pine and beech is the dominant. But apart from that, apart from the big groups, the pine mix beech, we wanted to cover the different percentages of mixture that we can find there. So for that, we established 36 circular plots that you can see here, like 5-meter radius, covering the whole range of mixture percentages. Okay, so at each point, at each of those sampling points, we opened a soil profile deeper as the depth of 40 centimeters. And there we collected the leaderfall, who was in the top of these points. And then in the lab, we separated into 3 fractions according to the composition state. The fresh, the fragmented, and the humified, conforming a total of 108 samples for the leaderfall. When talking about the mineral soil, in field we sampled by horizons because we are ethologists and we prefer the horizons. But then, well, the analysis was performed over these samples, but in the end, in order to treat the data and establish comparisons, we transformed the data into 4 different depths: 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and 30 to 40. So, and in the end, we had 144 soil samples. All of these samples were studied, where we analyzed different properties, but today I'm going to focus in the carbon-nitrogen content, the carbon-nitrogen ratio, and more important, the carbon storage, the carbon stock. So to analyze this data, we used a linear mix model in which we include the site effect, the depth, including the leaderfall and the mineral soil depths. We introduced also the percentage of pine and the interaction between depth and pine, which was our main question. So, in this slide, I put like a summary, because for the variables of total organic carbon, total nitrogen, and carbon to nitrogen ratio, more or less we found the same things. So we can resume here. If we look into the mineral soil, I say that no significant differences were found. Okay, no significant differences were found for the interaction, but we found it was significant by depth, which is as expected. And in general, the first layer, the first 10 horizons, 10 centimeters, sorry, had higher concentration of carbon, nitrogen, and also the relationship between them. But when we look into the leaderfall, yeah, we can find some differences. The interaction is significant. And we find that as the pine proportion increases, in the humified fraction, the carbon content is getting higher, so it's increasing too. And for the fragmented fraction, the nitrogen is getting down and the carbon content is getting up. But what about the carbon stock? I said that it was my main focus. So looking at this graph, I remember this is the beech, pine, and the mixture. Looking at this, we could say that the beech stands accumulate more carbon than the mix, followed by the mixed ones, and the lowest for the pine. But what happened when we analyze it with statistics? No significant differences. So we cannot say that there is a real difference between the different treatments. But what happens if we forget about the big groups, the pine, mix, beech, And we analyze the whole range of species mixture, from the 0% of pine to the 100%. Well, we start to see some things, so I'm very lucky about it. When we look at the leader fall, I remember I'm talking about the carbon stock. When we look into the leader fall part, the interaction was significant, and we saw that as pine increases, the litter accumulation, the total biomass, was higher, and a big part of it was the humified fraction. So the carbon humified was increasing with pine proportion. And when we look into the mineral soil, the interaction was not at 90%, 95% significant, but almost significant. In general, as said before, the first 10 centimeters were always higher than the deeper layers. But an interesting thing that we saw is that as pine proportion increases, carbon stock in the first 10 centimeters was decreasing, was less, and the carbon storage in the deeper layers was rising. So, I said that with more pine, we have more litter and more humified fraction. This means that, okay, we have more carbon stock in the litter fall part, but it's less protected, because the carbon in the litter fall, it's more likely to be released to the atmosphere again, maybe for a fire or changes in the climate. And when we look into the soil, the mineral soil, we see that as pine increases, okay, the total carbon reduces, but the carbon gets into deeper layers. The 44%, almost 0.5% of the carbon, is in deeper layers. So we have less carbon, but it's more protected. So is it good or bad? So as preliminary conclusions for the 3 questions that I stated, about the question that if the mixed stands storage more carbon, we can say that mixed stands seems to be in an intermediate position, as we can see in the picture. Then, about if the carbon distribution in the soil profile is affected by the stand type, as I said, we see in all treatments that the first 10 centimeters accumulates more than the deeper layers. And as pine increases, the carbon gets deeper, even though the total stock decreases. And for the last question, if there are any differences in leaf litter accumulation and decomposition, for the pine stands, as I said, we have more litter fall, it means less protected, and this litter fall is more humified, which is more stable, but not so protective. So, what can we expect from this? That
Sorry to tell you, time is over.
Is the last one? Yes.
Finish.
Okay. So, as I said, we can say that till now we have to study more in deep, but separated they are good at different things. But when they get together, they find a great balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina, for your presentation.